The anime begins with the protagonist, named Leo, in the middle of a destroyed city in which the remains and rubble of buildings can be seen in the rain. Among the silence caused by the rain, we see that he is armed with a sword and a kind of combat uniform. At that moment, a voice asks him not to overexert himself and that if at any time it hurts too much, he can go somewhere else at any time. After this, he asks her to please live her life the way she wants. Leo simply turns around and tells him that he will do it, and after that, he leaves. Some time later, we see this same individual with a kind of hooded robe walking along a snowy mountain in the direction of a huge castle. When you reach the gate, you can see through it several goblin soldiers rebuilding everything that was destroyed. That's when Leo has memories of himself massacring his enemies in that same place. After this, continue moving up some stairs until you reach a red door, and after knocking on her from the other side, a female voice is heard giving her permission to pass. In this room, which is the throne room, we see 5 people, 2 men and 3 women, with one of them sitting in front of him. The one that catches his attention the most is the girl sitting on the throne, who we are told is the demon queen Echidna. After this, we are introduced to his 4 generals, Edward, a were-dragon, Mearns, a murderer, Lily, a beast girl, and Shutina, a succubus mage. Leo, knowing the situation he is in, tries to go unnoticed because he is the hero who defeated the demon king's army, and little by little he begins to approach them. Once he is in front of his feet, he removes his hood revealing that he is currently the former hero Leo Demonheart. They react by being surprised that the boy who defeated them now appears in front of them, as he asks them to join his army. But despite saying its advantages and why it can help you, the demon queen attacks him thinking that he is making fun of her, telling him that it is impossible for them to accept him into their troops and attacking him repeatedly. Although he tries to insist that it can actually be beneficial in raising an army even more powerful than it was before he defeated it. But Echidna continues to ignore him as she continues to launch bursts of fire at him, which do not seem to affect Leo too much. After this, he tells us that approximately a year ago, the demonic army under the leadership of this girl appeared in the human world looking for a surprise mission. However, the king hired him to defend humanity. So like every hero, he gathered an elite group and they left the capital quickly. After this, they tell us that there was only one problem, but that they solved it easily since he is really powerful. Being a royal knight, he has mastered every weapon known to man, not to mention sorcery. Due to the enormous difference she had with the rest of the group, since the mage only wanted to learn healing spells, the soldier had no idea about magic, and his archer was useless when the enemies got too close. The truth is that they were quite useless to him, not to mention that they were a burden for someone like him. So he had to go alone with the excuse that with the time he lost with them he could have saved the world 5 times. And after that, he defeated Queen Echidna by himself and brought down the demon army alone, showing off how immensely powerful he is and that there is no reason for the demon queen not to hire him. After telling us this little story, we see that Leo is meeting with the 4 great generals, and Edward tells him that perhaps he hasn't hired him because of his annoying personality and behavior. But he insists that this does not make sense since he has proposed a perfect plan to make his army again as good or even better than before. This makes Lily, the beast girl, happy, and we see that there was already a certain previous relationship between everyone, because they met at the time when the hero was on his way to defeat Echidna, and he even became friends with the little girl. After taking a look at how the 4 generals were quite a colorful group, he is interrupted by the mage Shutina, which asks him not to give any more detours and if he has any topic to discuss, to do it once and for all. Because if Queen Echidna found out that they were meeting with him, she would burn the castle to the ground. He explains that they only met with him, since after they kicked him out, he returned and asked for it on his knees. At that moment, to try to convince them, Leo introduces himself to each of them and gives them a reason why they should count on him from now on, explaining to them how powerful he is and how he defeated each of them in combat. This makes the dragon man laugh, which confirms that it really had been too long since someone beat him in a fair and honest duel, and he says that crossing swords with a powerful opponent is a delight. This is when the memories of how he defeated each one begin. The first one he faced was Edward, who was the physically strongest by far, since he was a master warrior, both strong and durable due to his dragon scales. Because if I had to fight him with only a sword, he very much doubts that he could have done anything to him. However, using magic, he easily defeated him. After this, he says that because this man is someone noble, he is also a bit of an idiot, since he only fights head-on, and asks him why he follows the orders of the demon queen, if since he is so strong, he could rule. to everyone, to which the man replies that he just wants to live the life of a good swordsman, fighting worthy opponents, and that ruling is a very hard job and he could not spend time with his daughter Julieta. After this, Mearns, the murderer, tells him that he really feels sad for him, since by traveling alone, he should not have friends to spend his time with. And after this, we see how he was able to defeat this boy. Here they tell us that Mearns is a young half-demon, who was once in the Assassin's Guild, which he demonstrated in his combat, since his speed was unmatched. However, despite attacking him from all sides stealthily and quickly, Leo withstood all the damage without problem, and with a spell he demolished part of the church in which they were fighting, causing rubble to fall on him, defeating him, something that brought him problems with the villagers because he destroyed a protected site due to the damage caused in the fight, and it seems that he left without paying, making a gesture that he doesn't hear anything. This gesture is repeated by Lily, the beast girl, who we see acts as if Leo were her older brother, trying to get his attention and make him feel proud of her. That's when he says that the way they met was pretty ridiculous, since when he took shelter from the rain under a tree, she was there. She apparently had amnesia, saying she had no family, friends, or anywhere to go back to. So on his honor, he couldn't leave a little girl alone and decided to take care of her for a few days. However, in the end, he remembered who he was and said that it was the Beast General, who attacked him to protect the Demon Queen. However, she did not last long in the fight and was defeated. He discovered that in his tribe, if someone strong defeats you in combat, you are destined to marry that person. Back in the present, we see that the little girl asks him when the wedding will be, to which he answers that it will be when she grows up a little and is older. Finally, we are told how he defeated Shutina, the sorceress, who was said to have mastered any existing spell. To take advantage of this, Leo went forward casting a spell that prevents using magic, forcing her to fight a physical combat, in which she was embarrassingly weak, and that's how she finally won. And as he tells us, 2 minutes after the fight, he began to cry asking for mercy. After telling all this, he asks them if they now understand why he is the most deserving of being part of that army. The mage gets angry because being a sorceress, she is obviously no match for a hero in physical combat, to which he mocks by saying that a true professional should always have a plan B, and she's sulking and asks him how he's supposed to have a plan B for someone who can nullify all his spells, since there is literally no one in the world who can do that in the split second they walk. But she mocks him again, telling him that he has someone like that right in front of him. After this, Mearns says that he really wanted to hear how he defeated them all, and everyone agrees that she was the weakest of them all at that moment, which makes the girl blush, and she asks him to say where he wants to go at once. And he asks why the hero suddenly wanted to join the demonic side. That's when they tell us that in the final battle, the demon queen Echidna against him, it was a really eventful fight, since she had transformed into her final form. However, the hero dodged and blocked all of his attacks until he was thrown into the air with a tail flick. But as if nothing had happened to him, he attacked through the smoke, approaching Echidna, and after breaking through her protective shield, he pierced her power gem with a dagger, weakening it, thus leaving her out of combat. And after this, he returned to the capital where he noticed that people were beginning to fear him due to his great power, since if someone that strong turned against him, no one could stop him, and everyone began to move away from him. Some time later, a rumor began to spread that the hero was a danger to everyone, and that is why they decided to try to kill him by killing him, since they no longer considered him a man, but a monster. So the next day, they hired a group of assassins to try to kill him. However, they were extremely weak, and even Leo considers them an insult, since he himself had defeated the Demon Queen alone. How could simple low-class assassins stop him? Some time later, the king wanted to talk to him and was deeply grateful for the help that Leo gave to the kingdom, saving him from that threat and protecting the philosopher's stone. However, seeing the fear his people had, he decided to be good to him and simply banish him, telling him that they no longer needed him, but that he wholeheartedly trusted in the boy's goodwill. After this, Leo lived hiding and going unnoticed, being a hooded man who wandered through the towns and cities, as he thought about why he risked his life to protect such a rotten world, realizing that because of this he never had a home or made roots anywhere, so he had nowhere to go. Until one day he heard that the demonic army was looking for recruits again to try to rise again. And after hearing this, without knowing why, he came to the conclusion that the only ones who would be willing to accept it were them. So he spent nights awake working on his plans and contributions towards Queen Echidna's side, so that they would realize that he really wanted to help them. And after crossing burning deserts and gigantic snowy mountains, he arrived there. And that's the reason you want to work for them. Upon hearing this sad story, Lily begins to cry, and Shutina decides to give her a little chance, since she did not notice any falsehood in her words. However, he would not be officially hired, but would first have to go through a 1-month trial period, in which it should be profitable enough for the army, demonstrating its usefulness for it. And also, so that the Demon Queen does not discover them, he should always use a magic item or a spell to remain disguised at all times. After this, Leo asks him what the main problem they now have is, to which the woman answers that her main priorities are to reinforce her ranks, repair the castle and acquire weapons, and many other problems, since organizing an army is very complicated. After this, Lily also says that she has a lot of work, since she is in charge of logistics and resource management. And this surprises Leo, since he knows that it is the most important thing of all, and they have given that position to someone who has no idea how to do it. This angers the Maga, as she tells him that if it had not been for the fact that he had defeated the entire army, they would not have these problems right now. However, Edward calms her down by telling her that now he will help them fix all those problems. Finally, they all welcome him and tell him that once he passes the trial period, they will be the ones who recommend him to the Queen so that she can officially hire him. At night, we see that Leo is thinking about everything that needs to be done from now on and wants to get the best results, since he wants to ask Queen Echidna something he has been thinking about since that fateful day, since she saw that it was she who gave the order to her army not to kill unnecessarily, or harm anyone, invading any territory peacefully. Fact that makes Leo doubt why it is so important for her to invade without causing any damage, and why despite having been defeated, she refuses to leave the human world. And after remembering the phrase "live your life as you want," you gain the self-confidence to fight to join your group. The next day, in the morning, Leo wakes up ready to start his day helping with the work to raise the demonic army again. So he prepares to go to the magician when he realizes that the door to her room is closed. Using a spell, he manages to force the lock to enter. Once inside, he realizes that the woman is still sleeping and tries to wake Shutina. However, she does not seem to react in the slightest to Leo's attempts, so he decides to wake her up with a scare by imitating the voice of the Demon Queen, telling her that there is work to do. After that, the woman jumps to her feet and regrets having left her work. She apologizes, really scared and embarrassed, until she realizes that he is Leo. At this moment, being in his pajamas, he gets embarrassed and casts a powerful spell on the boy, destroying the wall of his room. This alarms the Demon Queen, who at first thinks it is an attack. However, upon realizing that it is part of one of his generals, he calms down, thinking that it is just stress. A while later, Leo sweeps up everything destroyed by the magician, who, angry, walks around the room lamenting. When the boy asks her why she is like this, she tells him that it is his fault, since right now he is massively overworked due to all the damage he caused when he defeated the army. Now the demon army is severely lacking in personnel, since most of the higher-ups had returned to the demon world to recover from their injuries. And because of this, the generals now have an excessive work, which is really exhausting, since there are many tasks for one person. After this, Leo tells the succubus not to worry because he is there to help her, and that she should be kind. But she, angry, answers that how can she expect it to be with a man who enters her room while she sleeps, to which he jokes that she shouldn't care since she's a succubus. This embarrasses the girl, who attacks Leo again. After a while, when Shutina has already dressed and prepared, she reunites with Leo, who is waiting for her in his office. There you see a large table with a lot of paperwork and a to-do list. She confirms that they are ordered by importance, and he, after reading them, realizes that there are easily more than 50 written tasks. He asks why he doesn't decide to delegate some of them, but she, somewhat sad, asks who she could, since she has no colleagues or subordinates. So he agrees with her and draws her attention to one of the tasks, which is to recharge the mono reactors in the castle, explaining that there are a series of installations that take advantage of this magic for the operation of different instruments. However, it raises the first problem, which is that only the person who created them can replenish them with energy. Therefore, the reactors created by Shutina can only be replenished by the mage herself, because if someone with a different magical wavelength tried it, the reactor would be destroyed and explode. After this, Leo decides to take that mission, taking charge of replenishing the reactors. At that moment, the succubus thanks him for taking care of that task, since it is a headache for her. He explains that he will do this using the Harmonize ability, with which he can copy his magical wavelength and replicate it. After this, Leo asks her how many reactors she has in the castle, to which she tells him that she only has 4, even though there are more than 100 throughout the castle. And there is no problem with them, since they simply have to be replaced once every few days. After this, quite sure of himself, Leo asks him for 2.5 hours to complete the job. to which she is a little disappointed. She tells him that she can do it herself in less than an hour, to which Leo tells her to be calm, since he will surprise her and promises to never disappoint her, to finally mock her, saying that once he finishes she will thank him and will even jump on him and give him a big kiss. But she ignores the topic a little, thinking that she won't be able to surprise her. After this, Leo goes to complete his mission, but first he uses a metamorphosis spell, transforming himself into a black knight, and he thinks it should have a name. So he again approaches Shutina and asks if he could give him the title of assistant to the generals, since that will make people trust him and obey him. She allows it and Leo leaves the room. But first he asks him what he thinks of the name Godheart, but she ignores him and orders him to go do his job. As he leaves the room he meets a girl, who seemed a little worried, but she runs away the moment she sees him. Meanwhile, in the castle meeting room, the Demon Queen and the other 3 generals are together talking about how if they notice Shutina acting strange, let her know immediately, since you are somewhat worried about her and want to help her. However, the rest convince her that this would stress her out even more, and Echidna agrees with them. After 30 minutes, Leo returns to the magician's office. She asks him why he speaks strangely, and he explains that he thought about changing his way of speaking to fit in more. And after looking at the clock, he asks why he is there if only 30 minutes have passed. But he answers that he should calm down, since he has already taken care of his work. And she then tells him that she will give him another task. But he answers that he is a little tired, so first he will take some time to regain his strength. And he tells her that while he takes the break, he wants to see her work to learn from her and that he won't bother her since he will be sitting there in silence. While she works, time passes and he tells her that he has had enough rest. But he, while eating, tells her that he would prefer to rest a little more. And he realizes that the food is pretty bland, so to cheer up the troops they should improve the food there. This angers Shutina a little as she begins to think that Leo is lazy. And when an hour passes, she gets up indignant with him, telling him that he should be more than rested by now. But when he refuses to continue working, she tries to lift him up by force. So Leo uses a spell that increases gravity on him so that she can't lift him off the couch, to which she berates him, since he has enough mana to waste on silly spells, but not enough to work with. The magician returns to work again, while the boy lying on the sofa thinks about what would be the best option for his new name within the demonic troops. And he asks the general what she thinks of the name Lord Onyx. Seeing that the boy hasn't done anything in a long time, she realizes that he is a useless and lazy leech who only wastes resources. This scared Leo a little, since Shutina begins to materialize her magical scepter, and he tells him that he has realized that he will be of no use to them in the army. So he begins to recite a spell with which he will attack Leo. At that moment, someone knocks on the door, and it stops. Leo is happy, as he says that someone important has arrived and that he will join the Demon Queen's army anyway. And after hiding his presence, transforming back into the Black Knight, the girl who was previously in the hallway bursts into the room, whose name is Dianet. And after officially introducing himself as Lord Onyx, he asks the young woman to tell him about her reactor maintenance report, while Shutina looks a little strange. At that moment, the girl begins to tell that she was able to recharge the reactors thanks to the talisman she gave her. And this surprises the beloved, who asks Leo if he had not been the one who had recharged the reactors. But he explains that he went to the castle workshop and got an amethyst from the goblin goldsmith. Then she used that talisman and cast a spell on it to have the same magical wavelength as her. Thus, anyone who had such a talisman could recharge the reactors, taking a great burden off the general team. And all this in just 15 minutes. After this, he lost 5 more minutes because Lily unexpectedly distracted him. And then another 5 minutes to find Dianet. And with his last 15 minutes, he taught him how to recharge the reactors. And after this, he gave the order to Dianet to find other people with the appropriate capacity for that task and to divide the work. So she found 3 other sorcerers with similar abilities, and they passed the talisman to refill the reactors. Finally, he thanks him for his good work and tells him that he will soon give them more talismans so they can speed up the work. And that, even though it has taken him a little longer than he would like to do this task, since it is his first time, he will forgive himself. Meanwhile, Shutina, speechless, doesn't know what to say. So Leo tells him that this task is already done and that it is his job to reduce the burden on his shoulders. So, since Dianet was worried about her health, he decided to help her. And this makes the magician happy, who tells him to count on her from now on for more tasks. And this makes the young woman happy, who leaves happily. Once alone in the room, Leo asks him if he finally understands his true tasks, which are to organize tasks for others to do, and she will only have to help herself if something goes wrong, thus greatly reducing the stress and burden she had. He also explains that work is not something that should be done alone, and even less so in a large organization where there are many people who can help. And it tells you that instead of having an extremely skilled person who works very hard, it is better to delegate many small tasks to less skilled people. Then, she asks him why he hadn't told her before, to which he replies that it's because he worries too much. And if he had told her that she sent the task to someone else, she would have been much more nervous and would have wanted to go herself to check if everything was working correctly. And when she realizes that he has discovered her completely, she is ashamed, and he continues telling her that she has to be calm, since most of the people in the army are people she interviewed herself, and that she must trust both her judgment and the people who work below her, and she must run the organization so that everything can continue to function if she dies tomorrow. This teaches a great lesson to Shutina, who gets angry with him afterwards, since he realizes that while everyone else was working hard, he was doing nothing but lazing around in his office. However, he corrects her, telling her that while she was resting, she was also working while watching him, and that he has learned a lot from seeing her. And he even noticed some things that were not very efficient at some points in the tasks. And he even took the trouble to better reorganize his work preferences, marking 2 sevens which are the ones he can delegate to someone else without a problem, and that she would just have to teach them, since it is her job as a boss. And after Leo starts looking at a map, the magician apologizes to him for misjudging him, to which he responds that he has no problem helping her, since if she falls, the entire army falls with her. And if that happens, she really won't have anywhere to go, so she don't have to thank him for that. And after that he decides to get to work on his next task, to which before he leaves, she thanks him for the help. And he jokes that he forgot something, reminding him in the sentence he told him that he would be surprised if he had done the work too, and she would pounce on him to give him a kiss, something that has greatly embarrassed the sorceress, who attacks Leo. At night the two get together again because Shutina has an important mission for him, because Lily is heading on a logistics mission, since the castle's food and equipment are running out, so he asks her to go give them a hand to make sure the shipment is safe. And he, seeing what a bad plan Lily had, decides to accept the mission so that everything goes well. The plan basically consisted of going to the Long Sea, in which scattered throughout its beautiful waters are many islands, most of which are unexplored, shrouding the sea with a certain mystery. But in the middle of those islands, there is a paradise of abundant resources, full of flora, fauna, and mineral deposits to discover. There are shipwrecks from a long time ago that have been reclaimed by nature, and it is where Leo is now enjoying a little vacation. However, those fantasies end quickly, interrupted by little Lily, who is playing with some members of the demon army, challenging them to a race to see who is faster, and Leo is a bit angry because she sees how little use the girl is turning out to be. Here we have a memory of the previous night in which Shutina was telling Leo the plan, in which Lily would head to Largo the next day on a logistics mission. Due to the remoteness of the place, Leo was a little surprised, but the sorceress explains to him that the demonic army and the people of Largo have a firm and unbreakable alliance. There we are told that about 3,000 years ago, the demon king Belial led an attack against the human kingdom. After their defeat, many inhabitants of the demon world found peace with humanity and became a diverse part of their society. However, when a race called the Dragonfolk was aggressively persecuted by humans, it was clear that coexistence would not be an option. And because of this, these beings had to leave to live in peace on the Largo Islands. So because they still remember that painful story, they accepted Queen Echidna's invasion with open arms. And it is thanks to them that the demonic army was able to continue the fight against humanity for so long, being a kind of lifeline for his army. After hearing this, Leo now understands why he is sent to help with the logistics mission. Because the castle's food and equipment are running out, so they must make sure the shipment arrives safely. Since the biggest problem is the broadcast plan that Lily proposed, which due to his age and childish thinking was very unserious and therefore usually took a long time to complete his missions. After hearing this, Leo asks why they don't send Edward, since being also a dragonfolk, everything could be made much easier with the people of the islands. But Shutina tells him that they can't send him, since they need him to protect the castle. Plus, he always wants to do all the tasks himself, and Lily wouldn't learn anything if he did all the work. This makes Leo a little sad, as he thinks it is absurd that she joined the demonic army to end up doing a babysitting job. However, he ends up accepting, and after making a little off-color joke, she expels him from her room. The next day, they finally arrive in Largo, where Lily was causing trouble by having fun like a little girl, causing destruction around the city. Finally, upon reaching the portal, she is happy for having won the race and congratulates everyone for having been such good opponents. At that moment, Leo asks her if they can stop playing now, and she answers that they were playing to see who could bring the supplies the fastest. However, an elf tells her that there are still many provisions that the portal will carry, but Lily says that it is enough for today, and that they should go eat. This worries Leo, and a while later, Lily offers him to eat a coconut that she herself had just grabbed from a palm tree, while he thinks that at that rate they won't finish, since Largo has a portal between the Demon Queen's castle and that island. But the island's storage and logistics facilities remain packed with supplies, and thinks that if the forces of the innumerable races of the island were effectively used, they could finish the job in a single day or two at most, if the right person were assigned to the job. This thought was cut off again by Lily, who offers him a delicious carrot, but he tells her that he is not hungry right now, and she responds that she will go give them to the others. To which one of the goblins asks who Leo is, and she, before saying that he is her future husband, is grabbed with her mouth covered by Leo, who introduces himself. A while later, while the creatures continue with the transport, he observes that there is a structure that needs repairs and says that we must prioritize that before anything else. However, the goblins ignore him, as they tell him that any changes in procedure must be signed by the boss. And that's when he sees it as a lost cause. At dusk, he laments that no one pays attention to him because he is only a temporary guard. And furthermore, many of the people in the city have become angry with the troops due to the various destruction that has occurred in the village. So he himself had to apologize and offer condolences, realizing that if all this continues, they will also end up losing the dragonfolk and the logistics center completely. And if that happens, it will only be a matter of time before the demon army goes down. At that moment Lily arrives, who, seeing Leo depressed, asks him if he feels sick, and he answers that his head hurts. However, this greatly worries the little girl, who runs off in search of medicine. Meanwhile, at the Demon Queen's castle, Shutina asks a goblin if the supplies have arrived yet, but he answers no and leaves. It is then that Merns and the sorceress have a small conversation in which they doubt if it is too much work for Lily, to which she responds that she is one of the 4 generals, just like them, and remembers a conversation she had with Echidna, in which they talk about how even though the hero defeated them, there was not a single casualty. So the Demon Queen says that it is because the hero held back, even though they threw everything they had at him, and he is depressed because they couldn't do anything at that moment. Lily appears with a flower in her hand, telling him that she found that flower at the door and that she wanted to give it to her. And after this, he tells her that they will plant many in the garden, because it will surely look very beautiful this way. And this makes the queen happy. Back in reality, we can see the sorceress in the middle of the garden, which is full of these flowers, and says she's sure Lily understands what she needs to do. Returning to Largo, we see that Leo observes the little girl looking for medicine, and at that moment he realizes that the little girl is very good and pure. However, she is very immature and childish, so he can't communicate with her logically, just like he would with Shutina. And even though he's glad she cares so much about him, he wishes she'd spend half that energy working. And at that moment an idea comes to him. Later, as night falls, Lily is back with the medicine and apologizes for taking so long. Upon entering the tent, he realizes that Leo is lying on a bed, suffering greatly, and he tells her that a snake has bitten him. After this, he himself tells us that it was he who summoned that poisonous viper to help Lily mature. She becomes very sad because he tells her that, no matter how strong he is, he will be dead within 12 hours. But she suggests telling Shutina to heal him. However, he tells her that the portal is broken, so they can't return to the castle. And he goes on to tell us that he made sure that no one on the islands had the ability to cure him, which meant that the only way to save her life was for the little girl to go look for medicinal herbs. This is how the boy's plan begins, and he tells him that some should grow on the peaks of the west. And quickly she leaves, so that once she disappears among the trees, he heals himself using a spell and sends his spy eye to watch the little girl, since he has prepared tests all along the way, and to overcome them, you will have to manage your people well and use the power of teamwork. That the tests were designed to teach her how to manage a team, and because of the great determination with which the little girl searches for herbs, transforms into a great white wolf called Fenrir, the divine wolf, which is a protective deity on the continent where Beast Girl comes from. And even though he has no idea why she is able to transform into something so important, he knows with certainty that he has reached the first test, which is breaking a huge rock, which he himself protected with a spell that blocks physical attacks. The little girl tries to scratch and break it. However, it has no effect, and Leo says that to break through they need to find a subordinate who can remove the spell. However, due to Lily's personality, she attacks the rock again and again and again, becoming frustrated at not being able to do anything to it. And although Leo is sure that sooner or later she will discover that if she can't do it alone she will have to ask for help, he is wrong at the moment when the rock begins to crack. The little girl in her wolf form continues attacking again and again, making the cracks in the stone larger, and to Leo's amazement he ends up shattering the rock without anyone's help. But he is convinced that he will not be able to pass the second test alone until inside a cave he reaches a large wall made of slimes, which have the ability to divide infinitely when you break them, since among all those slimes there is a slime that is the core, and if you defeat that one, they will all disappear. The quickest way to pass the test is to bring in someone very perceptive or even someone who could freeze the slimes. However, destroying so many slimes causes the pressure between them to end up crushing the core, thus once again exceeding Leo's expectations and passing the test alone. She continues moving forward until she reaches an area where she hears a voice, and a few meters ahead she sees a huge cliff. And they tell us that it is the third test that Leo set, creating a huge abyss with magic, which is impossible to cross to the other side by jumping. And a mysterious man, who looks like a bard, appears telling him that he is a simple traveler called Godheart, which really is the transformed Leo himself, who has hidden his scent so that he does not know that he is the transformed one. After this, he sees Lily running away from the cliff. However, fear makes him stop and he does not dare to jump. And Leo knows that despite its great jumping ability, it will not be able to reach the other side, since there is only one way. And at that moment he begins to sing, saying that if he had a friend who could fly, he could help him cross the rift. And he explains that when he can't solve a problem on his own, he can always solve it with the help of a friend. After this, she thanks him and tells him that she will ask the rest for help, while she leaves deep into the forest. And after this, Leo is very happy, since now he will learn the importance of teamwork, and will make sure he get all the practice he needs covering any mistakes. At that moment he feels Lily calling him from afar, and sees her swimming in the river, which tells him that he asked everyone for help and they told him that they could swim at the bottom, and then climb up. And this is what he did, to then thank you for the advice. And one by one he overcame each test that Leo had given him, in every possible way, except the ones he had in mind. The next day he wakes up and realizes that next to him there is an empty bowl, which has a spoon, and on his face there were traces of having eaten something. After this, the beast girl enters the room very happy to see that her friend has a better face, and she tells him that she got the herbs and fed them to him. He thanks her and tells her that he is feeling much better. And after this, she remembers that she wants to show him something, giving him a paper with a drawing in which he had explained a plan of how to work, and asks him if that would be the correct way. To which he, surprised, asks if he thought of that on his own. She tells him no, it was advice given to her by a man named Godheart, who told her that it is much easier to work together as a team than separately. So she thought about it while he was sleeping, and she says that because she's stupid, she doesn't know things unless they tell her. And then Leo realized that it was as easy as telling him what to do and little else, realizing that in the end he himself was the idiot, and not the little girl, since all I had to say to him was, hey, try this. And he congratulates her for the good job done, making the little girl very happy, who later says that everyone was super happy to divide the work and do it faster, thus realizing the importance of teamwork. Once the mission is finished, back at the castle, Shutina is happy to see the little girl's growth to become a reliable leader. After this, the portal asks Alexis why she called him, and she tells him that another important problem has arisen. And the Queen of Echidna herself wants the Night Onyx to appear before her immediately, which scared the boy a little to think that she found out. After this, we have a vision of the past in which we see a modern city being a victim of chaos, as we see buildings burning and destroyed, while we see Leo on a helicopter to whom they are speaking through some kind of device, receiving the order to confront the enemy, prioritizing the protection of civilians, to then see how the boy jumps from the helicopter and cuts a kind of orc in half in front of a woman who is left bloody. And after giving him a little look and checking that he is fine, Leo continues massacring enemies one after another, while he himself tells us that, despite being the savior of all the humans present there, they did not receive him with cheers, but with eyes full of fear and grandiose expectations. But he didn't care, since the reason for his existence was to protect humanity. And again in the present we see how everything was a nightmare of Leo, realizing with this that the rest of the day will end up being horrible. And he remembers the talk he had with Shutina the day before, in which she told him that perhaps the queen is upset because he hasn't shown up to her yet. However, the sorceress told him that everything is going correctly thanks to the help of the Night Onyx, and then he reproaches her that perhaps she wants to see him for that same reason. At that moment they tell us that Echidna was chosen as Demon Queen only for her assignment. However, she is so powerful that she can take on Edward with her sword in one-on-one combat. We are also told that she is a good spellcaster, just like Shutina, to the point that it is scary how powerful she is, and no matter what tricks he uses, he may still be able to see through his disguise. At that moment he is interrupted by the sorceress, who tells him that, whatever, she must hurry and asks him to call her without hesitation if he realizes her identity. However, he tells her that she will be fine and, after conjuring his armor again, tells her that he will figure it out on his own and for her to act like she doesn't know anything. On the way to the meeting room, Leo thinks about what excuse he could give to the Demon Queen. However, when he meets her, she treats him jovially with a huge smile on her face and even apologizes for calling him on such short notice. And he thanks him for all the help, then asks him to take a seat at a large table with a huge banquet on it. A while later, after tasting the food and liquor, they continue talking calmly and friendly. However, Leo's wishes were to get out of there as quickly as humanly possible because of how terrified he is of her discovering his identity in that situation. Until finally she makes him a proposition, which worries him quite a bit, since she asks him to take off his armor helmet, to which he replies that it would be rude to show his face to her. But she insists, telling him that she would like to talk to him face to face. So she approaches him and she herself takes off his helmet to see his face, to which he quickly uses a spell to change his features a little, thus lengthening his hair. Echidna hesitates a little at first and begins to look at him in detail. However, luckily for the hero, he goes unnoticed and she tells him that she likes his face and that she feels a great strength behind his soft face, which greatly reassures Leo when he sees that she is drunk. So, looking for a strategy to get out of there naturally, he realizes that her glass is empty and offers to fill it with the intention of getting her as drunk as possible. And so, one glass after another, glasses become bottles. And at the moment when he thinks he has achieved his goal, she cheerfully confesses that everything has just begun. Meanwhile, Shutina calmly enjoys a relaxing tea and begins to worry about Leo. At that moment, Lily enters the room to deliver her report. Leo, seeing his first plan frustrated, decides to try a new one, complimenting the delicious food he has on the table. And after talking about the origin of the ingredients, she confesses that she feels proud that Lily was able to handle the management work and that she trusted the little girl from the beginning, showing an innocent smile that surprises Leo. So take the opportunity to try to have an interesting conversation about how the chefs prepared the recipe, since this can lead to any type of conversation. So, after continuing to talk a little, the Demon Queen compliments Leo, not only for his work, but for his extensive culinary knowledge. Then after this, she asks him why he always wears that helmet and doesn't want to take it off. Leo is happy, since they have reached the topic of conversation that interested him. So he invents that he has been cursed by a goddess and that the time he is allowed to show his face to others is very limited. That's why he must spend most of his time wrapped in armor. So he takes advantage and tells him that he is close to the limit he can be without his helmet. However, he is glad to take the risk as it is a chance to spend time with His Majesty. And this makes the girl blush, wanting to spend the whole night drinking and enjoying those delicacies, which surprises Leo badly, since he had made the excuse of the time limit to leave as soon as possible. Meanwhile, in another room, Shutina and Lily argue about whether they should go see how things are going with Leo, but Dianette informs Alex Cypher that she has an extremely urgent message for her. Hours later, back in the meeting room, Leo is calmer since he still has not discovered who he is. However, he wishes above all things to be able to leave there. After thinking this, Echidna thanks him for reducing Shutina's workload as soon as she arrived and for keeping an eye on Lily. So she had organized that party to thank him for his hard work in helping everyone. After this, he asks her about her opinion regarding the hero Leo, telling her that he had heard that she also wanted to join the army and asks her if she would welcome him, but she angrily tells him no. And he is the last person they would want in their army, as he would surely destroy them from the inside out. While he thinks that everything is being enormously absurd because she literally has the hero in front of her and she hasn't even realized it. And she tells him that if it hadn't been for the hero, he would already have the Philosopher's Stone and they wouldn't be in that situation right now. So take advantage of the Queen's tantrum to tell us information about the Philosopher's Stone, and reports that it is a treasure found in the holy city of Renales, and that the first holy king unearthed it more than 3,000 years ago, using his power to found the capital. Rumors say that the Philosopher's Stone turned the wastelands around the city into green fields. It protected the people of the city from a plague and could even make someone immortal. However, most of her rumors are false and she knows this because she used her before, although it was not the same stone that is in the capital that he used. However, the Philosopher's Stone wouldn't give anyone superpowers or anything like that. It is not even a magical enhancer or a panacea. After finishing telling the information about the artifact, he realizes that Echidna continues to speak badly about him, revealing what their objective was with the invasion, and saying that his way of trying to get it was wrong and that the best way would have been to work alongside humans, to which this reminds Leo of a children's story of humans and demons who join forces. And they tell us about someone called Ibrad, the joiner of hands. The story tells of an imp who travels to the human world and builds a city where humans and demons live in harmony. However, that story has nothing to do with current reality, as humans and demons are destined to be at odds with each other. This arouses Leo's curiosity, who asks him what he plans to do with the Philosopher's Stone, since he defeated it the last time and after having lost the vast majority of his army and territory, he decided to stay and try to get back up from scratch instead of returning to the demon realm. Realizing that if he simply sought immortality or riches, he would have lost motivation and walked away. She then wonders why she wants to stay in the castle rebuilding her army. After this little conversation, she asks him to come with her. After this, they go out to the balcony and see the beautiful views of the snow-capped mountains at sunset. And she asks him if he's ever been to the demon realm. When he answers no, she describes to him how it is a huge, deserted wasteland in which there is neither sun nor vegetation, where the air is heavy and the water is dirty and impure. It causes demon clans to fight each other for what few resources there are, staining the wasteland with blood. So fed up with that, she wants to free that land from conflict and bathe it in sunlight and cleanse the waters, thus giving rise to meadows and forests that sway in the gentle wind. So he wants to get the Philosopher's Stone to reforge that land. And this surprises Leo to see that she had been fighting against humanity to improve the lives of her people. She continues saying that she has no problem with humans, however, she must get the Philosopher's Stone anyway, since if they offered it voluntarily, they would accept it without shedding blood. However, even if they explain their good intentions to them, they would not give it to them. For the sacred capital is the center of the human kingdom, and stealing what holds that city together would harm its livelihood. However, it is a sacrifice she is willing to make, giving sanctuary in the demonic world to all those who help her cause. However, he doesn't care what happens to humans who go against his goodwill, and he reminds her that he himself prohibits unnecessary killing in the wars in which he is a part. She answers that because of that way of acting they are at that point where they lost so completely. However, she does not want to become a villain entirely, since humans can be her enemy, but they also have homes they want to protect. And considering that, it's just something he can't do. To finish by being honest that he has no ill will towards the hero, as he exists to protect humanity. And I shouldn't blame him for doing just that, fighting an invader attacking humanity. These words make Leo understand that she is a kind queen who cares about her people. However, she became an evil conqueror to keep her beloved subjects. And he thinks about all the anxiety and worry he must have had throughout that time, realizing that he himself caused this discomfort in the girl. Having come clean on his part, she asks him why he decided to join the demon army. And after thinking that she has been completely honest with him, he decides that it would not be fair to lie to her, while remembering all the conversations they had at dinner. And just when he decides to reveal his true identity, they are interrupted by Shutina and Lily, who bring an important notice, in which Mearns has left a letter saying that he is leaving on a journey and asks please not to go looking for him. And another from Edward in which, because he did not train his troops correctly, he will make up for his mistake by taking his own life, which greatly surprises both of them. That same night, Leo goes to look for Mearns to ask him what his reason for leaving was, to which the murderer answers that it is because of his age, reminding Leo that Shutina mentioned that her birthday was not long ago. So the hero tells him that it really is impressive that someone between 16 and 17 years old is in the army and offers to throw him a party. To which Mearns tells him to stop treating him as if he were older than him, since they are more or less the same age. And these are the only words from the boy that bother Leo a little, which remembers the moment they received the letter about the murderer's next trip and Edward's attempts to get rid of himself. They each decide to go look for them, but they do not know Mearns' location. Following his trail of magic, he goes in search until he finds him and begins a small duel. The assassin did not know that it was Leo who was hiding under the armor, but once he takes it off, the fight ends. Later, talking about the reason the boy wanted to travel, Leo tells him that great generals can't just up and disappear, since if they lose one of you, they will now have to rebuild the army from scratch. So, to prevent him from escaping, with a small spell he ties his leg with a chain without Mearns noticing. And after that, he tries to convince him that if he has a good reason for leaving, He will leave him, but he must make sure he doesn't regret it. And after a short while talking, the murderer finally reveals his reasons for leaving, that he has been assigned the role of interviewer for the new army troops. He must do all this alone. However, you need to be energetic and imposing with the ability to speak. However, he is quite quiet and, despite being a guild master before, he let others do the talking, in the same way he currently does with the demonic army. So he thought he could learn something if he took a trip and visited many towns. But now that Leo is there, it would no longer be necessary, and he asks him to teach him how to have conversations. But Leo, because he's not quite sure how to teach him that, asks him if he asked someone else for help. But he says no, as he didn't want to bother them since everyone is busy with their jobs. After hearing his reason, Leo asks him if that was really the reason why he left a letter like that. And after this, thinking that everything was useless, Murns tries to escape. However, he cannot, as he is tied by the foot. And after this frustrated attempt, the hero agrees to teach him how to have conversations in 3 days. Once back in the castle, both the queen, Shutina, and Lily thank him for his help. And Echidna talks a little bit about how the generals are also sort of advisors to her, so he must listen to his and the killer's thoughts about humans often clashed with his own. That's when Leo remembers that Murns, in his first fight after being defeated, asked him to kill him because if not, one day he would bring destruction to humanity, something he saw as quite out of place before arriving at the demonic army. And after this, ask about General Edward. So the queen answers that they went to the training camp and saw that he was really trying to kill himself. However, its scales were so hard that they broke any weapon with which it tried. And even though his reason was that he didn't train the troops properly, they still don't know the full story. So, in the meantime, his daughter Julieta will be watching over him, since she is the general's only weakness. The next day, in the castle dining room, we can see that everything is quite busy while the mouse cooks are preparing some dishes. The head chef serves them for the enjoyment of the troops, and there we can see both Leo and Murns working as waiters. But the latter is dressed in women's clothing because, due to his delicate face and those clothes, he could pretend to be someone other than one of the generals, since the troops would be nervous if it were their own superior who served them food. After a while, the murderer is not very happy with the methods they are using, since he's not seeing a relationship between serving food and becoming a master of communication. But Leo answers that service positions teach all the basic concepts of communication, since talking to customers and empathizing with them, even giving them recommendations on dishes, encourages them to have a better conversation. Again with the head chef, she tells him that he should smile a little more, otherwise it will scare the customers. However, when he tries it, it's even scarier. Leo tries to empathize with him, telling him that he does not need any talent to be a good communicator, he just needs practice, since he himself was very bad at conversing in the past, and that he has no idea how many people he has talked to or how many times he has failed, and he was even a little embarrassed. And he advises him not to use phrases that are too short or repetitive, reminding him that conversations are a group effort, since some throw some words and he returns them, and thus a pleasant conversation is created, since they want to know that he's listening to them. And after this, he gives an example, asking him to imagine that he is eating with friends and talking about soup. There are many options for having a conversation, whether agreeing that it is delicious or perhaps not, saying that it's not his style, maybe even recommending or saying that he's more in the mood for another specific type of food. So he's to be empathetic with the tastes of others. However, Murns replies that empathy is the first thing they have to get rid of when you enter the Assassin's Guild. So adapting a little to the killer's style by having very little empathy, he thinks that the best trick he can do is to just shut up and listen. But after hearing this and not understanding it, he thinks that he is playing a joke, so he kicks him, saying what kind of conversation would that be if he doesn't talk. But Leo explains that a good communicator is also a good listener, and Murns reproaches him that he is always silent, to which the hero answers that it is because he always wants the conversation to end, and explains that listening carefully to what the other person says is the way to have a good conversation, and that's how he did it the first time he tried to talk to someone. And once people know that you are a good listener, they will even come on their own to ask you for advice or opinions. So, after these words, the murderer tries to test him. Just at that moment, they call him from one of the tables to order. So he walks over, and at the table there's a group of werewolves, who tell him that he has taken too long and threaten him by telling him that they are a dangerous group and that he would not want to be on their blacklist. After this, the leader tells him that she is beautiful, and the murderer asks them what they want to eat, to which the leader of these mercenaries says that they want beer and meat. So Mearns answers that he needs more information, since they have a wide variety of beers and meats. After this, the leader makes fun by repeating what he said and everyone laughs. So after this, the boy suggests red pepper stuffed with meat, since it goes very well with the drink. But he slaps the letter out of her hands, telling her that he is hungry for a pretty woman, making a pass at her. But Mearns answers that it is not a service they provide in that dining room. Seeing this situation, the head chef recriminates Leo for not going to help her. However, he reassures her, telling her that he will be able to manage on his own. And a few seconds later, the assassin immobilizes the leader against the ground by putting him in a headlock, nearly breaking his arm. And when the rest of the group tries to attack him, he easily knocks them all out. And everyone in the room is amazed. So Leo thinks that he should teach him how to disguise himself better. His turn is already over. On the way back to his rooms, the hero tells him that his first day hasn't been bad at all, and that acting that way is the best way to deal with guys like that. And reminds him that he gave them a suggestion on what to order. So he even did better than I expected. So, to end the day, he asks her to change and go to her room. Late at night, he asks her to sit down, since they are going to do a practice interview together, in which Mearns will interview you to test the skills you have learned, so he can ask him anything. The assassin takes advantage and asks him about his real reason for joining his army, telling him that he knows that what he said about wanting to bring ruin to humanity is a lie, and this greatly surprises Leo that he has discovered it. After this, Leo begins to tell him about his past and the first time he experienced a demonic invasion. And they continue talking about the reason why he lied to join the demon army, since with his current power he wouldn't need it to be able to plunge the world into chaos. This surprises Leo, since he sees the great improvements in speaking that Mearns has had. He tries to distract the conversation by looking for a piece of paper to give him the credits that he is now a master. However, the murderer asks him not to avoid the question and asks if he is not upset that he has given everything to protect them, and that they rejected him, telling him that it is very strange that he did not want them dead, just like him. So he asks him if he investigated his past, to which Leo reveals that Mearns is half human and half demon. So when he was little, humans were afraid of him and his parents sold him into slavery. As time went by, he ended up in the Assassin's Guild, which he was able to survive by having enough skills. And that's why he joined the Demon Queen's army to wipe out humanity once and for all. So on the day of the invasion, it was he himself who opened the city gates for the army to enter. However, due to Echidna's ideals, she would not kill them, as the murderer wanted to happen. And despite his doubts, he finally joined the army. However, he still didn't understand why he got along with those humans. So Shutina explains that unnecessary fighting simply means having worn out troops. So to raise their spirits, they must have this type of breaks. And then Edward appears, who tells him that he was going to refuse to be part of the army, since he thought it was going to be a cruel and bloody war. However, he changed his mind when he saw Echidna's compassionate and kind actions. So after talking a little more, the sorceress asks what Mearns' reason was for joining the troops, to which he could not tell them that he joined expecting the annihilation of humanity, answering that he had no reason for it. So the Demon Queen confesses the reason for her desire to obtain the Philosopher's Stone. And after listening to it, he gets up and decides to go to sleep, thinking that if it becomes necessary, he will eliminate the queen himself and lead the demonic army to destroy humanity, becoming one of the 4 great generals after that, helping to guide the army until Leo appeared, thus remembering the advice he gave him after defeating him, which was to dedicate himself to exploring the world a little more. But Mearns replied that he had seen enough of it and that nothing was interesting, to which the hero tells him that it is because he saw it with the eyes of a murderer, and gives him the life lesson that the world looks different when you see it on your own terms and not just because of work, to finally give him the advice to look for something in the world that he has not seen. And if after that he still wants to die, he will kill him himself, or if he does something evil, he will also kill him, to finally say goodbye and leave. Again, in the present, the killer asks him why he doesn't seem to have a hatred for humanity in the same way that he does for himself. Because if he really had it, he wouldn't have advised it that way in the past. And after seeing him at his most sensitive, she realizes how much she is learning about the 4 generals and decides to open up to him. When Mearns promises that he will listen to him, Leo tells him that he felt quite bad when they told him that they no longer needed him and even asked that he be killed, especially since he defended humanity for a long, long time. And that's when he begins to tell his true story. He was born a long, long time ago in a place called Tokyo, where the capital of the kingdom is now. and after telling him all the advantages and artifacts that were available at that time, he tells him that only humans lived in his world. Until one day, suddenly, a hole opened in the middle of Tokyo from which these strange creatures began to emerge. But back then they only called them demons. And just like Queen Echidna, they were tired of the darkness of the demon world, so they decided to invade Earth. Many tried to exist peacefully alongside humanity. However, others chose violence, so humanity decided to fight, and little by little these apparitions began to appear all over the world, until finally there was a world war against these beings. But humans were just as weak or even weaker than now, even needing a dozen soldiers to defeat a single demon. So world leaders came together to create weapons capable of stopping the invasion, using demons to create their own creatures with which to confront them. The Demonheart series, in which he was one of the weakest, but the only one to survive to this day. This story greatly surprises Mearns, but the hero continues telling him that since he was born, he did not know any other way to live other than protecting humans, since those orders were planted from the beginning. And yet, even though the others were very strong, little by little they fell in battle one after another, until only he was left, thus losing his opportunity to die. For even after the industrial world fell and magic replaced machines, he continued to live. This happened so long ago that he can barely remember it anymore. However, every time a war broke out, he was there to fight, to the point of becoming too strong to die in battle. This brought doubt to Leo's mind, since he did not know if it was the right thing to do, since he was making humanity depend on him whenever it had a problem. And he simply could never abandon his duty. Almost the last time he was left out he felt a little bad. But he wasn't upset, he was happy. These words continue to surprise Mearns, who looked at Leo in disbelief. And the hero goes on to say that those were the words that gave him the opportunity to stop being a hero. Because this way, the next time humanity needs help, he can be the same and do what he really wants. So now he spends his second life doing what he always wanted, joining the demons. However, despite all the information given at once, the murderer does not understand anything and ends up banging the table to silence Leo. He is surprised to have told him his entire story without realizing it, thinking that the murderer has actually become a very good listener. After this, Mearns says that it makes no sense, since according to legend, the demon king Cyprius made his invasion hundreds of years ago. At that moment, Leo follows the story that the murderer was telling, saying that a mysterious wise man saved the world, raising the question to the boy about the hero's age, and after this, really asking him what it is, to which Leo answers that it is just an external that they built to be a little stronger than the rest. And as for his age, he is not very sure, since he stopped counting it when he was over 1,000 years old. And he adds that over so long you have met many good and bad people, and you can assure that they are the good ones, because even though they are a little stupid, they are good people. Finally, he reassures him that he will make sure everything is happy and he himself will get the Philosopher's Stone for them. Not understanding anything he was telling him, the boy lies down on a kind of armchair, and asks him why he decided to tell him all that, to which he answers that it was because he looked very serious and had a strong motivation to really want to listen to him. After that, he congratulates him, telling him that he will do great in his interviews and that he will be able to get all the interviewees to open up to him. And after listening to the encouragement given, the murderer falls asleep due to fatigue from that exhausting day. In another room, Echidna looks at a book of children's stories while thinking that the person in its pages might be able to mediate life between demons and humans. The next day, in the mine, we see some army workers, who discover several giant robots hidden among the rocks. It was surprising, since they have never seen anything of those characteristics. Meanwhile, at the castle, Julieta talks to Leo about her father, saying that he always assumes everyone is on his level. We are told that the training he subjected his troops to was far above what they could offer, since they were defeated by a chimera, taking responsibility for the failure himself, since he is the man who trains them and thinks that the only way to atone for it is to take his own life. Leo thinks it is nonsense, since even if he died, that would not make his troops stronger or solve the problem. Julieta informs him that at least her father has abandoned the idea of going out of his way. However, training was impossible for newly enlisted soldiers, because they lacked experience and training. The hero asks why she trains rookie troops at such a level, to which the girl answers that her father expects them all to be as strong as him. So, when he saw that his soldiers were unable to defeat the chimera, he simply thought that his soldiers did not try hard enough. Meanwhile, Leo thinks that this is a hateful phrase, since most of the time it is said by the clever or the powerful, attributing his position by virtue of his own efforts. But this is almost never the case, as a powerful fighter might have been born with a more muscular build, or a smart planner could have gone through a good school from an early age. Discounting, of course, all external factors played a role in its success. So he explains to the young woman that unfortunately it is difficult for people to realize how unique and talented they are, since that was something natural for them. They hope it comes naturally to everyone else, thus demonstrating that the problem is that good warriors are not always good teachers. Because when people want to train others to be as strong as them, they ask themselves what they did to get where they are, and then they have their students do exactly that. If it's too hard for them, a good coach would make it easier by changing things. However, someone skilled and powerful doesn't do that, and they think that the reason their students fail is because they don't try hard enough. To that, adding the fact that Edward tries very hard, that could be part of why he assumes that what he achieved is through pure effort. So Julieta tells him that after fighting him, she misspoke her lack of training, doubling her daily efforts. However, due to his nature and way of being, he is making his troops faint from exhaustion. And even though the soldiers take their training as seriously as he does and try their hardest, they are not able to keep up. So Julieta asks Leo what they should do. Meanwhile, in another room, Mearns tells Lily and Shutina the story of Leo, and they start to think among themselves what could be the reason why he lied to them and joined the army. But the little girl, due to her innocence, simply says that he saw that they were in trouble and wanted to help them because he is a good person. And although they agree with him, they doubt that these are really his real intentions, agreeing that if at any time he did something strange, they would immediately report it to the queen. However, until that time comes, they place their trust in him. A while later, in his room, Leo thinks of some way to make Edward see reason, paying attention to Lily's report in which she explained that they had discovered something very large, metallic and very resistant. At that moment, there is a knock on the door, reporting that Queen Echidna is looking for him. And once with her, he informs her that General Edward left his post, saying that he was no longer in a position to lead the troops as a general, so he has returned to being a common infantry soldier to train with his subordinates, thus being a serious mistake that only worsens the situation. So Leo decides to make a proposal, handling the general's situation himself. So, somewhat reluctantly, Queen Echidna ends up accepting. And after this, Leo decides to leave to make preparations. And just before leaving, the queen tells him that once she finishes this problem, there is a matter she wants to discuss with him, so he simply nods his head and leaves. A while later, already in the mine, Lily shows him the enormous robot they unearthed, and this gives them information that it is a machine-age artifact, much more powerful than an S-rank chimera, a mechanical golem, which were built specifically to combat high-ranking demons. So they'll use it to teach Edward a lesson. More focused on the day, the Dragon General gathers a group of soldiers, not to do any training exercises, but to give them an announcement, which is that from that day on he leaves his position as general and will be a common soldier, his daughter assuming the role of general. All of this is being seen by Leo from the air, who has a kind of invisibility spell so that he is not detected, saying to himself that this harsh world they live in won't let him give up so easily. Starting the huge robot. After seeing the huge mechanical beast, he organizes his troops to attack the robot with the excuse that he is still his general today. However, no matter how much they attack him, they do not make a single scratch on him. And finally, the robot stops to start charging a powerful laser beam, which is Leo himself who has to divert because he did not know the firepower of the machine, since security restrictions are out of control. And after launching a second attack, the troops flee for fear of being annihilated, since the machine was too powerful. Seeing this situation, Edward decides to attack him head-on without hesitation. But Leo advises him to crouch down, and after this, the robot creates a huge laser blade in one of its arms, which the Dragon Man can miraculously dodge. The hero informs him that that weapon could easily cut through his dragon scales, and after this, he tells him to follow his orders, since he will guide him to defeat him, informing him that when his eye glows 3 seconds later, it will fire a laser beam, so he'll have to use defensive spells on his scales to deflect it. However, he gets distracted and cuts one of the spikes off his shoulder. The robot then deploys a vibrating steel blade, and Leo advises it to do whatever it does, don't take a direct hit from that thing, and that the blade itself is weak, so if you hit it from the side, it could destroy it. So, after also narrowly avoiding this attack, Edward says that he doesn't understand anything, and Leo reproaches him by telling him that it is the most basic of a mechanical golem, to which the man answers that he had never faced an enemy like that, and reminds him that it may be common knowledge for Leo, but not for himself. And after obeying the order given by the hero, He pounces on the robot, breaking one of its blades, while Leo realizes that his lessons are beginning to have an effect on the general. At that moment, the boy gives the order to Julieta to join the fight. However, her father tells her not to get involved, as he doesn't want her to get hurt. But she answers him by telling him one of the robot's weaknesses, and this surprises the man, since she did not expect her daughter to have knowledge about that machine. So this one hesitates a bit. However, Leo tells him that his daughter is right, so he should attack the right side, since it is his weak area. And after a deep cut, he ends up defeating the golem. After this, the dragon warrior thanks them, so that just after that an alarm begins to sound from inside the robot, causing the rest of the machines to wake up from their sleep, all at once, beginning to collapse the mine in which they were buried. So worried, Leo thinks that he is going to have to fight against these robots, otherwise they could cause a huge problem. But he is quickly warned by Queen Echidna, which she says will not be necessary, since she and the rest of the generals are in the mine to protect it. And after organizing a plan so that everything goes well, we see a small memory in which Echidna herself, along with her subordinates, they head to avoid a possible unexpected echo like the one that just happened. Back in the present, with a powerful fire attack, melt all the machines. In the afternoon, Leo teaches Edward a lesson, pretending to reprimand him, telling him that the dragon general was horrible in combat, telling him that everyone knows about the mechanical golems, and this surprises the general, since he can't believe that literally everyone knows about something like this. But Leo continues criticizing him, telling him that it is the most basic of all, and finally telling him that he was not trying hard enough, reminding him of those words, since they were the same ones he said to his troops when they lost to the Chimera. And realizing that one of his soldiers told him that they had never fought such a creature before, realizing that he did know how to defeat them, because he had been trained that way. However, he couldn't expect someone who had never fought something like that to know about the creature's weak points. At that moment, Julieta, following Leo's plan, stands in front of him, telling him that he does not have to insult his father, since he should not assume that his knowledge is common knowledge for everyone, since he has had years of experience and familiarity with these beings. However, they have never fought against something like this. And after continuing to fake the argument for Edward a little more, he ends it by getting the message that he should not assume that others can do the same as him, and that he should train someone starting from the basics and then moving forward slowly. So after these words, the general turns around to look at his army and apologizes to them wholeheartedly. So each of the soldiers takes a step forward, asking him to please continue his position, since they all join together inspired by the strength of the man. She changed. They will try harder, so they ask her in unison to continue training them. And Leo is happy that the message has reached the dragon warrior. Meanwhile, in the mine, the demon queen continued launching one attack after another at the mechanical golems, having a lot of fun since they were very resistant. The next day, Shutina enters Leo's room to inform him that everything has gone as planned, and the queen is expected to promote him to a leadership role alongside the rest of the generals. However, he tells him that he has a topic to discuss with him, as Mearns told them his story and asks him if he really lied to them about his reasons for joining the army. To which he replies that he will inform the rest when they are all together later, and asks them to trust that he will not betray them while he clutches a book in his hands. After this, the sorceress tells him not to reveal her identity until she gives him permission, because otherwise they might get into trouble. Then, he asks about the book he has in his hands, which was titled Ibar, the Joiner of Hands. He realizes that it is the same one that Queen Echidna always reads. Finally, he asks if they can really get the Philosopher's Stone, to which Leo answers that with his help they will have it as soon as possible. After this, the magician says that she will send a messenger when the preparations are complete. Once she leaves the room, Leo looks at the book and says that the image of the elf on the cover looks nothing like the original. After this, we see a memory from the past where the real Ibram was a small red demon with wings, who is talking to Leo, telling him that he can't speak for others, but the imps, the name of his race, want to be professional about it, since they are fed up with the conflicts and wars that exist in the demon world. To then say that the Demon King's experiments accidentally opened a great spiritual portal, and that is the hole that connects their world to yours. So they decided to go see, since they heard that it was better than the demon world. After this, he tells him that it is very difficult to travel between both worlds because a large amount of mana crystals are needed to keep a portal open, and very few of his race had seen the human world before that. The little demon is quite scared because he knows the danger ahead. However, he knows that they won't try to kill him as long as they hear him talk. So, continuing the conversation, he thanks him that there is peace in that world. But Leo responds by saying that peace ended when they arrived. Hybrid gets nervous and tells him again that he wants to get along with them, since he is tired of the fact that in his world all problems are solved with violence. And even demon kings like Belial do not prevent this. Upon hearing this name, Leo realizes that they share names with beings from human mythologies. To which the little goblin replies that perhaps some of his royals or nobles probably appeared in his world in the past, and perhaps it is the reason why Belial's name is in his books, the Imp. He is increasingly nervous as he sees an impassive look in Leo's eyes and is worried that he will kill him. However, he suddenly lowers his sword and asks him to follow him. After walking for a while, the hero asks him why his king opened the great portal, to which he answers that at first they did not even think about an invasion. However, they needed to leave the demonic world, since wars were fought over the scarce resources it offered. So they decided to open a portal to a small desert island. However, due to a mistake they ended up opening half of Tokyo, Japan. And because of the more instinctive beings like ogres and ghouls, they attacked humans, quickly unleashing a war. However, even though he tried to return due to the fear it caused him, the portal closed, leaving everyone who had crossed to the other side trapped. Since the only ones capable of closing the great spiritual portal are high-ranking demons, like the king. So his plan from the beginning was to let them die in the human world. To which Leo asks if there are possibilities that King Belial, along with high-ranking demons, will try to colonize his world. To which Hybrid replies that it is most likely, since humans are much weaker, and perhaps there have been some spies who have returned to report the strength of the humans and know how much power they have over them. After this, he explains that not all of them are demons, only the highest-ranking creatures of the demon world are called that. And they are much more powerful than him, so they use him to their advantage, since those above look at those below as if they were rubber on their shoes. And he asks if after that he understands why they wanted to escape from there. After a short conversation, he ends up explaining that he is neither a man nor a woman. He was simply created with masculine traits. And these words surprised the little demon, since he did not imagine that it was an artificial creation. After that, Hybrid realizes that it won't be long until someone kills him, so he directly asks him to end his suffering once and for all. But on the contrary, Leo sheathes his sword and thanks him for the information. This leaves the little boy somewhat incredulous, since he does not understand why he does not kill him, and he answers that he provided him with valuable information, so he will escort him to the meeting point where he will be kept safe. In that moment, Hybrid realizes that he is different from the rest of the humans he has seen. However, he has been able to see his enormous power, thus making him a monster that is neither human nor demon. And after this, they begin to go towards the protection point. Being in pure silence for a while, the little boy gets very nervous and decides to break it by asking Leo his name, which is surprised, since no demon had asked him for his name before. And the little demon explains that his father told him that telling another person your name is showing that you were born. For as long as someone remembers your name, you are never truly dead. And finally, it is he himself who introduces himself as Hybrid, the proud member of the Imps of the Dark Valley. And Leo answers that his name is Demonheart Series number 5 or DH5, Leo for short. After this, they once again summarize what has happened so far with the invasion, explaining to us that 12 biological weapons were made to defeat the demons that invaded Japan. And these were unstoppable weapons designed to imitate and eradicate demons, as they possess power that surpassed those of their invaders and had unwavering loyalty to humanity, saying that they are the last defense it has. This weirds out little Imp even more, and he asks if the only thing he was created for was to protect humanity, stating that that's a sad thing. There they inform us why Leo is in that area, since they had heard that a small imp, who knew how to speak human language, was in the area, so he himself went to the area and took him into custody. So, just as the reports suggested, he was friendly and got a lot of useful information from him. However, he made some statements that were incomprehensible to him. So she asks him why he thinks it's sad, and he tells her that it's how he feels when he thinks about all the problems he's going to have to face. Since its only reason for existing is to protect humanity, it will lose its usefulness once peace returns and the war ends. So Hybrid offers him to sit down and talk, and after continuing with the conversation they had before, asks him what's the point of risking his life to win peace in the world and then ending up without a job or a place to belong, and reminds you of your reason for existing, since he was born with a definite reason. And once everything is over, that reason will be taken away from him and he will have to continue living anyway, that being something terribly cruel. explaining to him that when the world is at peace, it will be a horrible thing for him, as he will wonder if the world needs him, and that doubt will slowly burn a hole in his heart. And because he is immortal, death would be a blessing to him. Since anyone has a good or bad life, they finally return to land. However, he does not have that privilege. Leo answers that, even after he no longer serves to protect humanity and loses his purpose, he will continue to live, being dragged away from those wonderful times when he met his identity, and he will be forced to move forward, confused and aimless forever, wondering if he will regain his purpose when another war breaks out. To which the little elf tells him that he will live forever and you will end up saving the world forever, gaining and losing its purpose over and over again ad infinitum, never being able to rest in peace. And that's why he told him that it's something sad. After this, he begins to think that there is no place for him in the world, even though he was born to save it. However, he wishes for another cataclysm to occur, even though one day he might question his way of life. All clear if he doesn't die in that war before all that. However, after this, he reveals to Ibrad that the war only intensifies and that unfortunately he is the weakest of the weapons in the DH series, so his probability of dying is high. This greatly surprises the demon, as he is surprised that he is the weakest with such strength. And Leo explains that it is for this reason that he has been accumulating experience fighting far from the front. Ibrad asks him if he is calm about the future because he is going to die. So he answers yes, and that he doesn't believe she suffers in the way he is imagining. So he stands in front of him and tells him that he will pray that they kill him before he is invincible, remarking later that it is a clear lie. Finally, they arrive at the station where they will keep him safe, and the elf, angry that he cannot return to his world and has to live for the rest of his life in the human world, he tells him that he will find a way for demons and humans to live in harmony, and he will continue to ask everyone to stop fighting and get along. After this, he asks him if he remembers his name, telling him that when he closes the gap between their towns, they better put up a statue of the two of them. Finally, some soldiers get off the truck to take Ibrad, and he says goodbye to Leo with one last phrase, asking him to flee from there if it becomes too painful. And if life makes it difficult for him, he should just do what he wants, since he knows nothing about biological weapons, but he must live his life as he really wants. And he reminds him that he must not be trapped with that order to be born to protect humanity. As they drag him away, and with a few last shouts, he asks that if humanity stops needing him, that will be his chance to find something else to live for and enjoy your life. Telling him that he will remember her name, she begs him not to forget hers, so that they finally lock him in the truck and take him away. These words remain engraved in Leo's memory, heeding the advice of his little new friend. Back in the present, Leo puts on the armor and heads to meet the Demon Queen and the 4 generals for his future ascension, thinking that the day has come when he will reveal his true identity. In the castle, we can see Queen Echidna finishing a decree in which Leo's temporary status would end, thus making him the 5th member of the great generals from that day on. The Demon Queen is happy to trust him, so she gathers the rest of the higher-ups and they proceed to have the ceremony, which is interrupted by one of the messengers, who brings bad news saying that the great spiritual portal is closing. This greatly surprises both the Queen and Shutina, so they go to check what it is. And that's happening because the rare crystal catalysts that keep it open have begun to run out. So among the members of the army with more magical abilities, they try to keep it open, while Echidna laments that this is happening at that precise moment when her future finally seemed assured. Thanks to the magic provided by them, the portal remains stable, but it is only a matter of time until it begins to close again, since in its current state it will not last more than 7 days open. Lily asks the Queen what will happen if the spirit portal closes, and she answers that they will not be able to return to the demonic world, since once it closes they have no idea how long it will be before another portal opens for the troops to pass through, since it could be hundreds of years or even millennia, and during that time the demon world will continue to suffer. So they must decide on the next plans in those 7 days. Shutina gives several options, the first being to return to the demon world before the portal closes. That is, withdraw and separate, because members of the army who are humans could not live in the demon world. Lily says she doesn't want to part with them after becoming such good friends. So Mearns asks about the second option, which is to immediately mobilize your army and attack Renales to take the Philosopher's Stone. But this plan is not supported by a general vote since their current forces are much weaker than they were during their last fight, since taking them into battle would only cause reckless bloodshed, especially knowing that they still have the hero on their side. And after this he asks Leo if he ever fought with him, However, he answers no, but he has heard stories. She informs him that she did fight him and was able to test his strength, since he was even able to defeat her. So after thinking that attacking the capital was very dangerous for the rest, he makes the decision to withdraw. And she explains that both she and Shutina will return to the demon world, but returning without the Philosopher's Stone would inevitably lead to a conflict over the throne. At that moment, everyone thinks they should tell him the truth about the hero, but Shutina tries to avoid it. However, the queen asks them to tell her, since even though she is 300 years older than the sorceress, they have known each other for a long time and she knows more than anyone the faith and hope he has put into the search for the stone. At that moment, Leo reminded her that when they drank together, she told him that she wanted to improve the lives of her people. And she says yes, she simply wanted the demon plane to have clean air and water and extensive vegetation, and that she studied and practiced everything from a young age to become the demon queen and travel to the human world to get the Philosopher's Stone and use it to achieve this. However, despite all their efforts, it all ended in defeat. At that moment, Leo takes off his helmet and begins to explain that the stone is not an all-powerful device that grants wishes. Seeing this, everyone is surprised. And he goes on to explain that it is an advanced engine from the mechanical age that uses a micro black hole to produce almost unlimited energy. And he is not sure that he can fulfill his wishes. However, there is a detailed manual on its operation hidden somewhere in the human world, and they are looking for it too, but its age has made it quite difficult to find. Then, the queen, who has not yet realized that Lord Onyx is the hero, he says that if they work together with humans they could find that manual they talk about. However, since they didn't want to, they would have to steal it. Therefore, their peace would end in war. But it is too late for them to consider that path. He answers that as far as he knows there are 2 Philosopher's Stones in the human world. This surprises Echidna when Leo says that they could leave one for the human world and another for the demon world. And that would be ideal to create peace between the 2 kingdoms. And after this he asks him to look at it. When she does, she sees the hero in the armor of his new 5th general. And he confesses that the situations were too serious, so he had to get rid of his disguise, completely removing his armor in front of the demon queen's eyes, to then apologize to her for having deceived her, explaining that it was the only way he could help them, since she wanted to check if she was really worthy of the power of the Philosopher's Stone. Because if he had realized that it wasn't, he would have left right then and there. However, after their conversation over dinner and wine, he was convinced that she was worthy, Echidna, so that there is peace in your world and the demons stop bothering humanity. So it will be worth giving him the 2nd stone. Realizing that Lord Onyx had been the hero all this time, she begins to laugh, blushing with embarrassment, going into a state of uncontrollable fury after a few seconds and launching a powerful attack. A while later we see the group walking through the snowy mountains. While Lily is freezing to death, Echidna, judging Leo with her gaze, actually asks him if the stone is where he is guiding them or if he is guiding them into a trap. And he tells her that yes, he is taking them to the right place and reminds her how much she has helped his army. So for a while they continue arguing. Here we see a small memory of Shutina which happens after the queen calms down after discovering the identity of the hero. In this one, the generals, Leo and the queen are gathered explaining why he did all that. While Echidna is angry and at the same time ashamed for not having realized all that while she curses Leo in 1,000 different ways. After that, the generals take the hero's side, revealing to the queen that he really helped them a lot, and that he should reconsider joining his army since they all owe him a lot, while she feels helpless, until he finally gives in to the pleas of his generals, to then ask him the location of the other Philosopher's Stone. After this, Leo tells her that they can find it in the Sechat Mountains, and this surprises her because that is very close to the place of the castle. However, Leo points out that she is protected by a fairly powerful guardian, but that should not be a problem, worrying Echidna a little since if the hero himself describes him as powerful, how scary should it be? So the queen finally agrees. Turn to the present, Lily is still suffering because she is so cold, and while the rest talk about the location of the stone, which is already quite close, the sorceress creates a spell so that the little girl stops suffering from the low temperatures. As they continue to advance, Echidna angrily asks why he wasted his precious time by only taking them halfway, and not directly to the place, to which Leo answers that it is because he wanted time to talk to her, since the Philosopher's Stone has been his great project for a long time and soon it will be his. After this he reminds him that the stone is not a magical device that can be used to grant wishes, and once he gets the stone he must make peace with humanity and look for the manual together, since without it they will not know how to use the stone. And after a little conversation about how until recently they doubted that peace with humanity could be an option, They talk about the story of unity that happened 3,000 years ago, and Leo confirms that it is a story that really happened. And he knows that humans and demons can live in harmony. And after continuing the conversation a little more, they end up arguing as usual, throwing snowballs at each other under the happy gaze of the generals. A while later, the queen asks him why he knows so much about mechanical civilization, since that happened approximately 3,000 years ago, and he confesses to her that he was born then. This greatly surprises the girl, which starts to wonder if he used some form of magic to extend his life or something. But after that he begins to doubt if he is even human, and he explains that when the demon king Belial attacked humanity, biological weapons called the Demon Heart series were created, and he is the fifth in that series, since in its design they placed emphasis on improving hyperreactive skills, being able to copy each and every one of the skills that his opponents throw at him to develop his skills to infinity. And now it is the result of 3,000 years of hard experience, explaining that he cannot die of old age. So in his case it meant becoming stronger. She understands that this means she possesses the strength of hundreds of thousands of soldiers, and the reason why he couldn't defeat him in their confrontation. But he's glad someone like him has joined their ranks. He goes on to explain that all the other weapons in his series died, so he's the only one left. And he explains that since he was born, a critical order was embedded in his core, protect humanity, and since then that has been his only identity. However, when there is peace he wants war so that he can be useful again. This strange Echidna a little, since he thinks that it makes no sense and that he should enjoy the peace he has won. However, his skill-building functionality put his commands and feelings out of control, and he began to go crazy. And he confesses that sometimes he thinks he's just holding humanity back, since this can work without a hero, and wonders if he's doing that by himself. But she corrects him by telling him that without him, the human world would be under his hands, to which he tells her that this time yes, but perhaps one day humanity could defeat the Demon Queen on their own. And when that day comes, you will no longer have anywhere to belong. And he knows that when that happens he will go crazy and bring chaos to the world, just to give himself a reason to continue protecting them, even if it means plunging the world into a disaster, just to get it out of it, becoming nothing more than a machine that saves the world over and over again, that being worse than any demonic army. And he asks Echidna if he knows what he will have to do before that. At that moment, the conversation is interrupted by Lily, which is very happy to have reached the top, and Mearns realizes that there is no guardian. Leo walks away from the rest of the group, until he finally turns around and stares at them to reveal that he himself has the Philosopher's Stone, since that is the heart of the Demon Heart series, an infinite energy generator, explaining to them that this is the Philosopher's Stone they are looking for. And he tells them that to obtain it they will have to kill him, because if they want her, they will have to rip out her heart, leaving everyone present in shock, while accompanied by a resignation from the demon army and a return to the position of humanity's hero, telling them that they have no option to flee, because if they try to escape, he will come down the mountain and kill every last human he finds, and it will even destroy the texts that tell how to use the Philosopher's Stone. Shutina, surprised, tries to approach Leo, but he stops her with a spell, shooting her right in front of the foot, reminding the queen that she wanted to save the demon world. So that will be the time to demonstrate his bravery, and, drawing his sword, he attacks them, telling them that from now on they will be the heroes of the story. In a flashback, we can see the past where Queen Echidna was little and was talking to a bard about the hero. This woman explains to him that he is in charge of protecting humanity, and is so powerful that it even gives her chills to talk about him. After this, he explains that he defeated the Chaos Lord Belial, the powerful Sorcerer Lord Astero, and countless other brave warriors of the demon army. And after this, he recommends that if she one day becomes his queen, she should not fight the hero, since that will possibly lead to her death. However, the little demon queen, quite sure of herself, tells him that she doesn't understand why she fears that hero so much if he is only a human, and he adds that if he saw him, he would simply beat him up. However, the only thing he doesn't see for sure is that she will be chosen as the queen. After these last words, we return to the present, in which Leo is telling her that she herself was the one who said she wanted to save the demonic world, and that he would endure blood, sweat, and tears to obtain the stone and achieve peace. After this, he draws his sword and proceeds to attack them. However, it is difficult for Edward to stop him. And after this, Leo gives his last message, saying that if they want to get the stone and save the world, they must take the role of heroes and stop it there, and now. These words surprise the four generals and the queen a little, since they do not understand what he means by that. But without time to react, Leo appears in front of her and the attacks begin under the surprised gaze of the rest of her companions. After a small exchange of blows, she asks him if he has lost his mind, but Leo, after ending up knocking her to the ground, he tells her that he is still sane. And he answers that his job is to keep the world safe and that is the only reason he lives, since he was created for that purpose. And with a cut in the air, he ends up breaking a large rock that was in front of him, surprising Edward with his incredible brute strength, who is surprised that he caused so much damage simply by swinging his sword. Leo continues saying that if he cannot save the world, he will lose his identity, because if humanity does not need him, then he himself will make them begin to need him, creating the problem, stating that he will save the world even if he must destroy it first. He attacks with another air wave, this time directed towards Lily, who manages to dodge it. Echidna, at that moment, asks him why he would want to destroy the very thing he wants to protect, since if he did that, all that would await him would be a devastated land. Leo, after hearing this, smiles, saying that he has protected that world for a long time, so no one should care if he destroys it, just to keep laughing out loud. Saddened by his words, his companions, the boy continues talking and says that emptying everything and starting from scratch sounds really good. And with a spell from his hand, a powerful wave of air comes out that knocks the demon queen back down, jumping with the intention of hitting her with his sword once she is on the ground. But Edward covers it with his sword, protecting it, and making Leo retreat. The enraged dragon man begins to repeatedly attack Leo, and asks him to please calm down, since he really is not like that. Shutina joins these words, saying that they have no reason to fight. But these words anger Leo, since he thinks that they have not been listening to him, and he imbues the edge of his sword with magic, repelling the dragon general. At that moment, when both of them take distance from each other, the sorceress uses an obsidian sphere to try to imprison Leo. However, it doesn't last long and is quickly destroyed from within the ball. A kick hits Edward's side, throwing it through the air until it crashed against a rock. And after this, the angry Leo looks at Shutina, telling her that if they want to get his heart, then they must kill him, asking them to stop using spells to stop him and try to finish him off with everything they have. She answers that if her heart really is the philosopher's stone, why doesn't she continue helping them like she has been doing all this time? And he reminds him that he told them that he would not betray them. He also asks him several questions, asking if he really lied to them or if they were never friends. But he simply answers that if they don't kill him, they will die, while he raises his hand and begins to generate a spell of luminous arrows, which they shoot without hesitation at the sorceress. But it is Edward who receives them, as he stands in front, sacrificing himself for the magician. Once the arrows are embedded in his body, they explode and Leo takes the opportunity to try to attack him from behind. But now Echidna, who saves her friend, blocking him with her sword. Shutina, after seeing the damage that Leo caused to Edward, begins to wonder if the boy really wants to finish them off. Meanwhile, the fight between the demon queen and the hero continues and he says that he is fed up with everything. With his hyper-reactive enhancement ability of his existence as immortal guardian of humanity and everything else, since it is a curse for him because he is not even allowed to die to end everything, since it continues to protect, monitor and defend. And even when they finally say they don't need it, it doesn't end. So the question is asked, who should I hate? To the humans who did it or to the demons by whom they were forced to do it? After this he raises his hand towards the sky invoking thousands of arrows of light. And after that he says that everyone is his enemy, so it will destroy both the human and demonic worlds. And he'll stop all that heroism stuff once and for all. To then lower his hand making all the spelled arrows fall. The generals and the demon queen manage to get to safety using magical force fields, but they end up very tired. At that moment, Echidna realizes that she knew that the first time they faced each other, Leo held back, and he begins to doubt if what he is using is his true strength. And he starts to think of a plan, since he knows he can't fight him in that state. However, his mana core has not yet fully recovered since his last battle, and think about using one last spell, despite knowing it's a gamble, which you don't know if it will turn out well. But you have to try. At that moment, Echidna's thoughts are interrupted with a plea from Lily, who asks Leo to please stop fighting, since he is not like that. And it reminds him of when they were in Largo and he listened to her when she had problems. And he gave him very good advice. So he tells her it's his turn to return the favor, and asks her to tell her problems and that she will listen to her. To then ask him again to stop the fight, Leo then sheaths his sword again. And he tells her that it is his biggest problem right now. It's just that I expected a lot from them and they are damn weak. While he generates 2 arrows of light in his hands, which he shoots through the little girl, surprising the rest by such an act. This angers Echidna, who tells him that after this he is no longer a hero, since no true hero would ruthlessly attack a harmless and unarmed opponent, and he quickly pounces on him, drawing his sword, which is blocked by Leo. Meanwhile, Shutina casts a lightning spell, which does impact against him. However, it doesn't cause him any harm, but this makes him happy to see that they are serious now. She remembers that if she wants her world to survive, they will have to stop it with every fiber of their being. After these words, Edward slowly sits back up and thanks him for everything he taught him, telling him that he was a good teacher and that he has all his respect from the bottom of his heart. Taking advantage of these words, Leo tries to mock him, asking him if he changed his mind when he realized that he was a villain, but the dragon man answers no, he still sees him the same way. So he will act because he is his friend, releasing the power stored in his dragon blood, making some come out of his back and a kind of armor of scales, and he proceeds to attack him with all his strength, hitting him with his greatsword and even throwing bursts of fire at him. But Leo stops Edward's sword with one hand, surprising him and beginning to cast spells with opposite elements at the same time, freezing the dragonman's body and burning it at the same time, making his dragon scales totally useless due to the sixth destroying them with a rapid temperature change. And finally, he throws him against a large rock wall, making Echidna realize that she really has an unstoppable monster in front of her. Mearns, who was a little away from the fight, puts Lily in a safe place and Echidna returns to the fray with the help of Shutina, which the latter creates a stone cage around Leo, and the demon queen throws an infernal fire at these rocks to try to embrace him alive as if it were an oven. But Leo is too powerful and after receiving the attack fully, he breaks the rocks that were around him, leaving them intact, but making the queen drop an important detail because she thinks the boy's special ability is his hyper-reactive enhancement, which means that he copies the skills of others and improves them non-stop, realizing that this can also happen towards defense, making him not only stronger after every fight he has but more resistant after every attack he receives. Leo gradually approaches her, but suddenly receives a superficial cut on the neck, which has been caused by Mearns attacking him by surprise, who regrets not having been able to kill him with that movement. Once together, they begin to confront the former hero, and the assassin asks him if he wants to die or be killed. To which Leo answers that both, since he wants to fight against the world and kill someone whoever. Otherwise, he will be the one who destroys the world. But Mearns tells him that he is lying, since he didn't need to join the demon army for that. He could simply start an endless fight. But instead, he came there and started helping all the people, teaching them to work more efficiently, thinking of the people who would survive, telling him that he wouldn't care about that if he really wanted to destroy the world. But Leo simply tells him to shut up. However, he continues saying that he does not hate the world nor does he want to kill humans and that he knows what he really wants. So he attacks Leo from behind, but also to no avail, since he ends up freezing him and leaving him out of combat, to continue laughing and say that he already said what his true objective is, to save the world even if he has to destroy it. Lily quickly returns to the fight transformed into the wolf Fenrir and tries to attack Leo, but he protects himself with a barrier and asks her if she is finally ready to fight him. She tells him that she doesn't want to fight and that even though he's laughing all the time, he doesn't seem like he's having fun. So to help him first he will have to stop him and tell him that he loves him very much. After hearing this, something reaches the heart of Leo as he shows a small grimace of feeling bad for his way of acting. But a few seconds later he dares her to try to stop him, causing her to pounce on him, quickly being knocked out by receiving a lightning spell, which leaves her unconscious on the ground. After seeing each of her friends defeated, Echidna asks Shutina to give her 42 seconds, since she is going to use her secret technique. And although the sorceress is a little doubtful about being able to resist such a monster for so long, she finally agrees, and the demon queen begins to channel her energy. While we see a flashback in which we see Echidna's father talking to her about how he has to teach her a very important spell, as it has been passed down from Demon King to Demon King for centuries. And after this they begin to talk about the hero, saying that the ancient Demon King Astero created a spell to help in the battle against him. Since it would only serve to defeat him, however, the spell has a limit of use and is extremely expensive to cast, and he doesn't know any Demon King who has used it. I was honest with her, telling her that the spell itself is nothing more than an unsafe bet. But the queen, proud of her strength, answers that she does not need to trust or fear him, since her power will be enough. And after this we return to the present, in which Shutina and Leo are fighting while she tells him that he is a terrible liar, since he could have killed Edward. However, he only sent him flying, interrupting Mearns before he could finish speaking, and he even hesitated when Lily offered her help. All this without stopping casting spells on each other, so that she finishes her sentence by telling him that the only thing he hates and wants to destroy is himself, since he fears a future where he wants to save the world but can't and where his life has no meaning, as he is afraid that he may actually destroy the world in an attempt to save it, forcing himself to play as the villain of the story, so that they defeat him while he is still in agreement and under control. Knowing that the Philosopher's Stone will end up in good safekeeping and humans and demons will ally themselves with each other when it is gone. Finally, he asks him if that is the best thing he has been able to do after 3,000 years of life, and he delivers a powerful punch to her stomach, sending her flying. And just before casting a spell on him to end his life, Echidna finishes her spell and tells him that he will be the one who will die, to quickly have another little flashback of his father warning him that that spell will use all his mana to disable the hero's abilities for a brief moment, naming this attack Anti-Leo and launching a powerful beam of light in its direction. Worried Echidna realizes that Leo could dodge the attack, regretting that he could not protect anyone or achieve anything in his life. However, when he focuses his attention on Leo, he notices that a thank you is vocalized on his lips, accompanied by a sad look. Meanwhile, a void surrounds Leo, which begins to float while listening to the order that it must protect humanity over and over again, repeating itself ad infinitum. And remember when he was created, with the sole order of saving the world. After this, we see missions that he had to carry out over time, since the first invasion. Realizing that he was only wanted when they needed him, defeating powerful enemies and bringing peace to the world, even celebrating that peace from the bottom of his heart. However, the more peace spread, the less the world needed a hero. And that's how little by little I began to lose the reason to exist, until another conflict or war arose in which he could participate and have another reason to live. Invasion after war after dispute, feeling like the world told him he only deserved to live in it when he was fighting. Little by little, time began to pass, year by year, even passing 1,000, and as time flowed endlessly, he traveled the world in search of battle, fighting endlessly. Also remember that it was built based on the development of hyper abilities. So, with each enemy he fought, he gained new techniques, until finally he stopped finding enemies on equal terms, until it became what the scientists who created it wanted it to become, an unstoppable biological weapon, impossible to kill, and immortal over time. Then, once again, a long peace arose. In this one he sees two little ones buying bread and the happy saleswoman praying that this peace would last forever. At that moment, Leo realizes that he should smile at the woman's comment. However, he himself knew that he was forced to say me too, as over time he realized that there was a small part of him that wanted the world to be in danger, so that people needed it, and had a reason to stay alive. And he began little by little to go crazy, wanting to save the world as a necessity, due to the fear of losing himself, even wishing for more danger and chaos to come to the world. That's when it occurred to him that he could do it himself, creating a danger in order to save the world again. So he decided to return to the place where he was created, while thinking that those in his series had a characteristic that prevented them from causing harm to humanity, since the thought-masking ability prevented him from having harmful thoughts. But by developing a personality and ego of his own, that functionality was disabled for him. So he knew how to make the perfect crisis for that world, starting to recreate the heroes who were his companions in the past, and himself, with the mission of killing all humans so that he himself can save them, since he still did not want to die and still wanted to be a hero. That same day, he hears a soldier report that demons had begun to invade the world, as a huge portal opened in the mountains. So Leo decided to take care of this, quickly realizing the problem it would be if his plan to recreate the heroes went ahead and understanding what he had been about to do, thus destroying the facilities and the already formed bodies of what were going to be their new enemies. Analyzing that he was going to destroy humanity for his own selfish satisfaction, realizing that from then on he was no longer a hero. However, the order to protect humanity continued to echo in his head, realizing that he really was the biggest evil and threat in the world, since he would be able to destroy the world and play with human lives just to fulfill his own desires, thinking that no demon king could be more evil than himself. Shortly after, however, on a mission to confront the demonic army and be the hero who would save the world, looking for someone worthy to leave the Philosopher's Stone so he can finally stop being a hero, and no longer be a threat to innocent people, he couldn't find anyone strong enough to defeat him and defend humanity in his place. Until during the invasion he met Queen Echidna, who gave the order that, despite it being an invasion, they had to avoid killing if possible, since any territory they occupied must be governed peacefully. Realizing what kind of person the current demon queen was, and after interrogating several of her servants, everyone agreed that it was somewhat strange, However, he wanted to make the demon world a better place, being a just, honorable, and pure person, to the point of even being on the front line of battle to guide his troops, being kind to all his servants, regardless of their rank. After listening to what his vassals had to say about the queen, Leo began to think that this could be the successor he had been looking for, even becoming the bridge between the human and demonic realms. So first he defeated his army, even defeating his 4 generals and the queen herself to exercise his role as a hero, to finally become useless to humans again, thus beginning to work with her to see if she was the right person to trust with his heart. Back in the present, Leo receives the spell directly, while great pain invades both their bodies, since the effort that Queen Echidna had to make was enormous, to the point of making every bone in her body contract, making her bleed from her nose and eyes. Meanwhile, Leo couldn't even lift a finger, as all of his abilities were being blocked, returning him to the state of weakness he had when he was created. However, a sad smile appeared on his face as he realized that he could finally die in peace. And after looking each other in the eyes, Echidna remembers a premonition she had when the hero attacked her army the first time. Upon hearing her name, she realized that it was the name of the spell, and had a premonition, which left her confused, since the demon king who had devised the spell did it hundreds of years ago, and no human could live that long. But when Leo told him that he was born during the mechanical age, that premonition became almost absolute, thus confirming that the hero lived for more than 3,000 years, being the same hero who fought against all the demon kings that came to exist, and that throughout all that time he never had friends or anywhere to return to or die in peace, living a solitary existence, protecting humanity from its deep loneliness, realizing the sad fate to which Leo had been condemned for so many years. Meanwhile, Leo stares into Echidna's eyes, giving him permission to end his life, since no one can do everything alone. And that is why being able to trust others is the only trait you need to have as a hero. And because he couldn't do that, he failed in his task, since he could never trust anyone. And after hundreds of thoughts coming and going on the part of both of us, they both came to the conclusion that all he wanted was for someone to accept him as he was and not care if he was the hero or not, and that they wanted to save him too. Finally, one last thought passes through Leo's mind, being happy to have chosen them as his last companions, since even if he dies, they will be able to unite the human and demonic world, regretting that they were not able to work with them more and realizing that they really did not want to die, but it was necessary. So Queen Echidna gave the order to the 4 generals to finish the job, and they attacked Leo at the same time, causing him mortal wounds that made Leo smile one last time, which fell to the ground accompanied by the heartbreaking scream of the demon queen. After receiving the powerful attack that ended the battle, Leo opens his eyes, lying on the ground, with his core exposed by a large wound in his chest, and smiles when he realizes that he has finally lost. He says he really feels very good, while the 4 generals and Echidna approach him little by little, also quite injured by the intensity of the combat. After seeing him in that state, Lily tries to get a little closer because she is worried about him, but Mern stops her by grabbing her shoulder. After this, the demon queen asks him if he really enjoyed all that farce, pretending to be the villain of the story, to which he answers yes, since he had always wanted to try changing roles. After hearing this, Echidna asks him why he held back against them, since he let him launch his final attack and did not dodge it. To which he answers that he did not want to avoid it, since they were losing. But Shutina reproaches him that from the beginning he wanted to be defeated, and that is why he took them there. This angers the demon queen a little, as she reproaches him that because of that nonsense he almost killed the 5 of them. And after this, he really starts to think about when he was planning to do all this. After remembering the boy's response when she asked him why he wanted to join the army, he tells her that his core belongs to them now, and that he used an emergency override to isolate himself from the stone's energy so they can take it out safely. But they would only have 300 seconds to do it, and they shouldn't dawdle as they can only do it once. Burns asks if they should just take her out, to which Leo answers yes, and although it's a little tight, it's like taking the cap off a bottle. So the murderer prepares to go where his friend was to take the philosopher's stone from him. However, Lily stops him, begging him to please not kill him. And after this, he makes the same proposal to the demon queen, asking her to please let him live. However, Edward holds the little girl, asking her to please not make a fuss, since the queen is unwell, causing the little beast girl to burst into tears due to the helplessness of not being able to do anything. Meanwhile, Echidna observes Leo, who is smiling, and he thinks that until the end the boy has protected humanity, since he really wasn't going to kill anyone or destroy their worlds, since he knew he could sacrifice his life to bring peace to both of them, and he willingly made that decision. and, even though it pains him to admit it, he really is a hero through and through. Suddenly, their thoughts are interrupted by Leo telling them that there are only 270 seconds left, to which the queen asks him if after all that he has any regrets, to which he replies that someone will take up his work and the demon army will function in the most efficient way. So, since everything is fine, he has no regrets of any kind. Hearing this, Lily kicks again while crying, trying to get out of the dragon man's arms. However, she is stopped by Mearns, who looks at her seriously, making her realize the seriousness of the matter, bursting into tears again. While Echidna thinks that the demonic world needs the Philosopher's Stone and Leo apologizes for all the problems. After this, Shutina and the Queen measure each other by nodding their heads so that, next, Echidna approaches Leo and kneels next to him. And he, after saying that there are 240 seconds left, says goodbye to himself to the generals and the Demon Queen, thinking that he is glad to have met them. And after closing his eyes, he is gently slapped by Echidna, which seriously stands up, stepping on Leo's body and telling him that she has changed her mind, since it is too much effort to make peace with the human world. And while she continues to step on him, she tells him that she has forgotten who she is and reminds him that she is the Demon Queen, the great Echidna. So since she is really very busy, she doesn't have time for Leo's errands. She tells him that he should be happy because she has decided to officially have him among her ranks. And since seeing that he is the only being who has lived 3,000 years and possesses the Philosopher's Stone, there is no one better than him to do that job. The worried Leo tells her that she is running out of time, to which she asks Edward to reason with her. But after realizing that it is very difficult for her to listen to reason, she directly asks him to remove the stone, to which the dragon man laughs, saying that he totally agrees with Queen Echidna, and that he better give up, since there are many things that he wants to learn from Leo and his death would be a great loss for him. After this, he asks him if he can think of anything better to unite their worlds than a man who has lived more than 3,000 years. After this, Lily asks him why he thought of all that by himself so he could end it all, and he asks why he didn't ask his friends for help, like he taught him, as she shakes them and finally lets her tears fall on Leo's face, while saying that she is stupid, so he can't understand why he wants to die. However, he will always listen to him and asks him to please not die. After this, Leo looks at Mearns and thinks that he is the only one who could assimilate this situation with serenity, and reminds him that he only has 140 seconds left, and that he is counting on him. Telling him not to let his emotions control him, he quickly receives a kick in the shoulder from the assassin, which begins to hit him repeatedly, telling him that he didn't need to be a good listener, and that he just needed to fight him, because thanks to that he could see that both his words, his attitude, his eyes, and the entire rest of his body screamed that he wanted to live. So he yells at him that if he really wants to live, let him live, reminding him that he himself told him to make the decisions he won't regret. And yet, Leo is being hypocritical by dying full of regrets. As a last attempt, he decides to ask Shutina, who asks him if he realizes the contradiction in his words, and he asks him what the real reason is why he wants to die. To which he finally answers that it is to protect humanity, since that is the order that they imbued in them and none of their series can disobey it, as the thought-masking order erases any rebellious thoughts before they develop. And yet, even though he was able to disable that order due to his ego, he cannot maintain his identity if he does not protect humanity. Because if something doesn't change, it will put humanity in danger just to save it. So after hearing this, the magician tells him that by that logic his ego should allow him to deactivate his order to protect. And even though he denies it, she forces him to try. So this one dives into his own subconscious, being an empty place in which an echo resounds with the phrase protect humanity, while thinking that it is nonsense since he has been following that order for over 3,000 years. And after hesitating a little if he can really deactivate it just like that, he concentrates, making the voice completely silent. And back in the real world, he wonders if he really managed to turn it off. And after realizing all the years he had been trapped by those orders, he wonders if he convinced himself that he should do it. At that moment, Echidna tells him that he has 30 seconds left and that if he really wants to end his life despite everything, he should say so, since it is your life and you must use it however you want. This phrase brings back memories of Ibrad, since he told him the same phrase 3,000 years before. And the Demon Queen tells him that if he really wants to live, don't waste that opportunity trapped by the orders of others, making him cry as he realized the new life that had just appeared in front of his eyes, while the wound in his chest closed little by little, to finally have the Demon Queen in front of her, extending her hand to her and offering her a place among her ranks, so that he finally returns his hand, closing the pact with a shake. accompanied by the words of Echidna, in which he promises that his 3,000 years of endless loneliness are finally over, making Lily cry with happiness, who runs to hug Leo, while the rest of the generals watch with a smile on their faces. A few days later, we see Leo walking around the castle, doing his tasks, such as replenishing mana, manage resources for troops, check how everything is going in the kitchen, see the status of weapons in the armory, among other things, until he finally reaches the main hall, where he finds his friends sleeping on the table after the banquet the night before, surprising Leo due to the calmness they had, thinking that they have really let their guard down. However, in the room, Echidna was awake and she agrees with him, since after all, they have shared wine with the hero and then fallen asleep in his presence. And after a little conversation about him deceiving them from the beginning, the Demon Queen says that since the day of his interview it was not he who claimed to be being tested, but the demon army, and after this, he asks him the same question again about whether he really has any regrets, since that was the only chance he had to die and he may not have another chance for centuries, and he accompanies it with another question, since he wants to know if he regrets having given up what could be his only opportunity to free himself from his burdens. He tells her that it is a good question, however, he wants to help her, because when they drank together he heard her story and knew that he wanted to help her from now on, since he wants to fulfill the wish of bringing peace to both worlds and being able to make the demonic realm a peaceful place to live, telling him to finish the sentence that he doesn't regret anything. And even though she asks him if he's really sure, since she is a conquering villain, he tells her that she is actually a very good person with a lot of kindness. So he asks her to let him help her so he never has to play the villain again, thus being the kind queen that she really is. And after sharing a couple more phrases in the conversation and laughing at everything that happened, they finally shake hands, and she tells him it's a pleasure to work with the former hero. At that moment, General Edward's daughter enters the room and upon seeing them holding hands, she misinterprets the situation and becomes nervous. And after explaining, Julieta says that she has come to report that the wyverns are mutinying, since they are not happy with their treatment. After hearing this, the Demon Queen wakes up her generals to solve the problem, sending Edward to put things in order. After this, a goblin enters asking for Lily, telling her that the management of the elixirs is being delayed, so the little girl leaves too. Dianette is also present, saying that one of the tomes in the library has gone crazy and is invoking a stream of chimeras, so Shutina decides to go solve the problem. Finally, the cook asks Merns to help her in the dining room, since without him she cannot keep up with so many people. And after this, little by little people continue to arrive requesting commands and tasks that need to be done in the army, to which he reminds Leo that he said he would do everything he could to help her, to which he smilingly tells him that he will get to work. And happy for his new life, he thinks about the story of the hero Leo, a biological weapon created 3,000 years ago, that he became free from his former order to move forward on his own, and how he made treasured companions and friends that he could trust, to finally leave heroism